Good evening, everybody. Final installment in my video series on how to fix an abusive instructor. Alright, this is your duty. If you belong to a school and you're up there in the ranks, you're part of the staff, the administration, organization, whatever, it's up to you to fix it. And some of you don't feel like fixing it. Some of you might not know there's a problem, or you're in denial, but let me tell you something really important. Let me tell you what I think is probably the greatest tool in all of this, regardless of who you are, what your style is, what you're teaching. Know reality. Face reality and know the reality that you live in. I was in the Marine Corps. I went to boot camp in the 80s, in 1988, and every generation of Marines says, "Oh, you should have seen this in the old Corps. We were tougher." Blah blah blah. When I went to infantry school in Camp Pendleton, California, I saw a T-shirt. Let me give you some background. 782 gear is the harness, the belt, the canteens, the backpack, the helmet, the stuff you carry into war, minus the weapon. The weapon is something else, right? Weapons and ammo are different. And it said, there was a T-shirt that said, if your 782 gear doesn't look like this, and below it was a suit of armor, a knight in shining armor with a sword and a shield and a lance and everything, then don't tell me about the old Corps, right? Each generation talks about how tough things were, and we take pride in that. My generation was tougher than yours. But I mean, some of that's foolish and some of that's just exaggeration. But let's say you take pride. Oh, my teacher was so rough and tough. He kicked a dude in the jaw for speaking out. He'd slap the kids around. All right, it's actually not a brag on you. It's actually an indication that there's something wrong with you, that something is wrong with your institution, because your institution is not aware of reality. And I'll tell you this, martial arts, in the antiquity of the human race, was started as a way of dealing with reality, of passing techniques down, weapons, use of weapons. Some people, it started in prehistoric times, where maybe a father would teach his son how to throw a spear and stab with it, and they would organize dances and mimic the motions of hunting and fighting with their spears, and that's probably the origin of kata. And yes, the first kata were musical in terms of they were warrior dances, right? It was all part of reality. It was a way to prepare for reality. But in this modern time, our martial art practice, by and large, is often a way of escaping reality or not dealing with the reality, right? Even if you're a rough and tough MMA guy, a boxer, a kickboxer, Muay Thai guy, and you compete and you give and take punishment, it's still, a little bit away from the reality of an assault, right? You may be a high-ranking black belt in a traditional style. You may be an MMA champion, and you may still be unprepared for some weird prison shanking scenario where you get attacked in the shower with, guys with improvised weapons who are going to first cut you and then rape you and then kill you, right? So reality. Martial arts at some point have to look at reality. And even if you're practicing martial arts to become a tougher person, to get better at a sport, self-actualization, to become a Zen Buddhist or a better Christian or a better Muslim, and sort of retreat away from worldly things, you still live in the world. And if you love your martial art, and if you love and respect your martial art mentors, your teachers, your peers, your seniors, and even your juniors, then you should control and get a handle on things that would cause this reality to hurt them and the school. If you hit the wrong person the wrong way, if you haul off and slap someone else's kid for loud mouthing, for being a jerk, right? What if you get sued? What if the school has to close down? What if you're preventing, really good people from coming to your school because they're like, something's wrong with that guy or that girl? You hear about school teachers, women, having affairs with their underage boys, right? Things like that. And of course, I'm mostly talking about physical, possibly verbal, maybe a little mental abuse, but mostly physical abuse in the realm of sexual abuse. If you even hear a hint of something going on and you don't look at it, investigate it, and ask tough questions, you're really setting the entire school and organization up for a lot of harm, right? So if you believe, as I do, that martial arts practice is good for you, it's good for the community, good for society if done the right way, right? And I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that this can help people in many ways, especially young people. I'm going to close with yet another anecdote. All right. I talked about an instructor that I had when I was a kid who was, slap happy and hit happy with people, even non-members of the school and civilians, right? And some people could say, well, that's just toughness. He's not afraid. But I mean, that means he's not afraid to break the law. If he's ignorant of the law, the people around him should have informed him. Sensei, you need to never do that again. You're putting everything in jeopardy. You're putting the school in jeopardy. You're putting yourself in jeopardy. You got a wife. You got a kid, right? You got a lot of people looking up to you and needing you. And if you wind up in jail and if the school gets disgraced, what would that be? Think in Asian terms. You lose face, right? So you've got to think of these things, right? But I'll tell you this anecdote. Years later, I'm in my 30s, and I was pretty big on going to tournaments, mostly because the different teachers I trained with in the different styles, if you did well at a tournament and if you attended them, and if you competed in weapons forms, fighting and self-defense, if they had a self-defense division, if I did every division I could, my teachers took that as a sign of he's really committed to this, he's really representing the school, he's really putting himself out there, to go there and then do forms competition, and then a weapons competition, and then a self-defense competition, and then do sparring after you've done all those things and risk a potential injury. That's really, I think, going the extra mile, especially if you're not naturally inclined towards tournaments. I didn't really care about him internally, but I said I'm going to care about him, especially in Kung Fu, where sometimes there's not a standardized curriculum, and your Sifu, will teach different things to different people based on aptitude and commitment, right? So I would go to these tournaments every time one came up. I'd throw all the money down and compete in all the divisions. And at one point, I actually had to move out of town to attend grad school, right? And so at that point I was living in New Brunswick, and it was easier for me to get on a bus and go to New York City, just as easy that or to go to my hometown of Hamilton. And it was difficult making it to class, especially with all my commitments, and I was doing my own training, and I had a couple private students. I've always taught privately. It's almost like personal training, individualized instruction. And at one tournament I met Master Xian Gao, and he gave me a card, and he said he was really impressed with me. He watched me do forms, weapons, fight. He said, oh, you move so fast. You look fat, but you move like lightning, and you hit people, they go sleep. Because someone went, excessive contact on me in the continuous sparring, and I popped him and broke his nose, right? And at the time, my instructor, was giving me a lot of crap, because he's like, you should attend more classes. I'm like, I'm in grad school. I'm doing what I can. There was a bunch of other conflicts. So finally, I checked out Master Gao's school in New York City, and I said, this is great. I'm going to train with this guy. At the time, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon had just come out, and he was in that movie. And, he was very open-minded and just a very fun person and lighthearted, and didn't play favorites. So I'm attending his classes, and I'm at one in Manhattan, and there was an older gentleman there. He was about 41 years old, in great shape, had abs and everything, and I noticed he would throw a side kick and it would just pop, right? I'm like, you have amazing kicks, but that side kick is just amazing. I said, and it doesn't look quite like the way Master Gao does it. Did you train something else? And we talked about our previous training, and I mentioned that I had trained with this instructor. And he goes, that guy. I'm like, you know him? He says, yeah. I grew up in Philadelphia, and at the time he taught there, and the kids were all scared of him. He was just crazy. And so sometimes what we would do, one of us, we'd call each other, and then one of us would call the school on a Saturday, on certain days, is Mr. So-and-so teaching? And they'd imitate an adult voice. And if they found out that he was teaching that day, they would pretend to be sick or try to contrive a way to not go to class. And I'm like, that was my experience sometimes, and this guy obviously loved martial art. He stayed in it, and he was older than me, and he had done it lifelong. So, are you weeding out bad people, or are you throwing away good seeds? Right? Be aware of the reality you're in. Sometimes certain teachers who are very rough and tough and cross the border into straight abuse think they're doing everyone a service by what they're doing, and they're not. They're doing a disservice, right? There's just a difference between drilling someone hard, making them do hundreds of push-ups and squats, repetitions of kicks, hitting the heavy bag, doing your kata precisely, and even yelling at them sometimes. There's just a difference between that and just hitting someone who's on the sidelines or who's standing at attention, right? If someone's just standing at attention in class and you see their attention wander and you pop them, right? I don't know if you're actually toughening them. You're just kind of teaching them that I guess it's okay to hit people that are your subordinates. I guess it's okay to strike people in the course of instruction who would never strike back at you. And I don't think that benefits society. I don't think that's a great addition to the reality we live in. Right? None of what I have posted in this series is intended to hurt anybody, and I know some people's feelings are probably hurt by what I said because it probably feels like I'm being malicious. But remember, I'm the one that had the experience, and other people had the experience, and I am not lying about my experience, and I'm not lying about what they told me. Maybe some people lied or exaggerated or misunderstood, but I know my reality. I was there, right? And when you're young, when you're like 11, experiences like that are etched into your mind. Let me tell you something. A lot of the times training martial arts as a kid, later as a teenager, and pivotal moments in my 20s, 30s, 40s, martial art moments, they're so real to me. It feels like they happened a week ago, not decades ago. And sometimes it feels like if I was to just step 8 feet, 9 feet in that direction, I could walk into that reality because it's that real, that vivid. All right. So I'm not trying to say any of this to hurt anybody. I'm trying to improve the field that we are in. Those of us who have been lifelong martial artists, who love the martial artists, who've taught and who really trying to maximize and optimize our ability to help other people and ourselves through this practice. I'm trying to help you. Okay? Think of the reality you're in. We live in a civilization with laws. We have to be careful of how we behave to preserve this thing that we love. Whether you're a martial arts innovator trying to synthesize information from different styles, or if you're just trying to stick with one tradition and not deviate from it for an iota. I mean, even those of you that don't want to deviate, you do deviate. You conduct classes in English. Yeah, you may even call out commands in Japanese or Korean, but I mean, even people born overseas from Asia and different countries teaching their martial arts as close as possible still have learned some English. They use toothbrushes instead of twigs to clean their teeth like they might have in Okinawa at one point. Right? They get in a car to get there, or take a bus or something. They don't walk in sandals 10 miles. Right? And many of those changes and innovations and concessions we did are good. They've improved everything. Being in a dojo with a flushable toilet, where you don't have to go down to the well and take a bucket and, wash your butt with a bucket after you're done. That helps the dojo. It keeps it clean, right? You use a modern push broom and brooms and mops instead of, rice straw broom. I know sometimes you still get on your hands and knees and you use the towels, but you are using modern towels, not something made of, hemp, right? You use soap. You wear glasses sometimes. Some of these arts are so old that nobody had glasses. You wear glasses sometimes, or contacts. All right? So, yes, keep as much of the essence of your art as possible. I'm a believer in contact, graduated contact, regulated contact. Some young, strong people, let them go full contact, but you should probably put gloves on, because if all of your young top students start walking around with black eyes and cuts and fat lips on a regular basis, no one's going to want to join your school, and, you may spread infectious diseases that way, right? Know the reality you're living in so you can live in it, so you can maintain your tradition or your innovation in a way that's sane and logical. And if it's happening in your dojo, talk about it, right? Talk about it, mention it, and try to change it. Be the change you want to see in the world. We're supposed to be in this thing to be more peaceful, self-controlled people. So call each other out. Call each other out, and especially if it's breaking the law. Don't break the law. Y'all have a good night.